Hey everybody, this is your Right Geek Honorary Man King, and leader, as always, of the Awkward Cough Squad, here with another video. Today, again, I'm just going to be talking about general news items, just rambling around again, because once again, I'm still working on that story I mentioned on Monday, so I don't really have anything official planned. Today, I did, in fact, go to a physical store for the first time ever. My mom needed a prescription filled, and so I went to the local Wegmans here in mumbledy-mumble suburban Northern Virginia, and I would say that just here are some of my observations. The mask coverage was about, I would say, 90%. Most people were wearing masks. The shelves were basically fully stocked. There was only a few sections where there wasn't much of anything, particularly in the meat section, and the toilet paper is still in short supply, but I was actually lucky and managed to snag one package, so that was nice. So the stocking there wasn't looking too bad, except for a couple of items. I did notice that they had all the people on POS wiping down the conveyor belt and the keypad and all of that before the next person went up to check out. So that was interesting, and they had these little marks on the floor where you were supposed to stand while you were waiting in line. So. And they had, you couldn't go into both doors. I tried to go into the usual door that I go in, because it's near where the handicap spots are. And the guy was like, no, we need you to use the other door. So, yeah, we're still limited into which doors we can go in. But, I mean, everything looked all right. Again, the stock looked pretty good. Maybe the produce wasn't quite as fresh as you would normally get at a Wegmans, but it looked like there was plenty of it. So so far so good, I guess, in terms of food supply. Well, we'll see how long that lasts. Other news that I've been seeing floating around the internet. I learned last night that Dan Slott is going to be leaving the Iron Man book in June, apparently. And that, as you can probably guess, that makes me happy because, and this has nothing to do with the fact that Dan Slott is an asshole. This has to do with the fact that his storyline was starting to get really boring. And as I've commented in previous videos, just really out of character for the character. And the other thing that annoys me is that he wasn't letting Tony be the star of his own book. When I pick up an Iron Man book, as I've said many times, what I want to see is Tony Stark. He's my love nugget. All these other additional characters, the cast of thousands we've got going on is, it's not really necessary. That needs to be winnowed down substantially. And I just hope that whoever gets on the book next kind of restores Tony to his former interesting, kind of angsty self, and kind of restores his moral center, especially because even in some of the much darker modern storylines that we've had in like the past 20 years. Tony still had a moral center to him, and even though he was occasionally, even though he would make choices sometimes that for him was like a rock and a hard place kind of choices, and he was trying to make the what he considered to be the pragmatic choice, and it would always end up badly and stuff like that. Even all of those dark storylines, there was still that core of him that was never, ever comfortable with making the choice that was pragmatic. And I would like to get back to that, because those storylines were were awesome. Um, yeah, so that's my thoughts on Slotto Bloctavius leaving Iron Man. Let's see, what else? Oh yeah, the Orcs thing. So Orcs are trending on Twitter because dum-dums are claiming that they are quote unquote problematic. And I think what's going on with that discourse, the reason why people are making that claim is that they don't actually understand where the orc imagery comes from. The idea of an orc is actually fairly universal in human mythology. I think that it's a function of our brains for us to, when we think of evil, when we think of dark forces, that's the kind of image that comes to our head. When we think of things that are inhuman and threatening and dangerous and evil, that's the sort of image that comes to our head every time. It's a universal thing. It's kind of an archetype, you would say. So, it may in fact be true that people use that racists and bigots and imperialists use the same kind of language to describe classes of people that they wanted to dehumanize, but that's not because the human personification of evil is necessarily problematic in itself. What was problematic was the application of that archetype to people who didn't deserve to have that archetype applied to them. So, basically what they're doing is they're confusing cause and effect. I think that's the way we have to see it. They think that because they think that describing people in racist ways came first, and it didn't. I think that, once again, this is a universal archetype that has existed ever since people started telling stories, and it's not the archetype that is bad, it's the incorrect application of that archetype in situations where in situations that do not call for it. So I don't know if I made myself clear on my thoughts on that, but that's my thoughts on that. So the upshot is there's nothing wrong with orcs. They're not problematic. What's problematic is when people treat real individuals as if they were orcs. When people treat innocent human beings as if they were orcs. That's the problem. But having an orc in a fantasy setting, there's nothing wrong with that. That's a universal feature of a human fantasy story. That's just how human beings think and how they have always thought for thousands and thousands of years. And the fact that it was applied sometimes incorrectly and in ways that were very damaging to people doesn't mean that universal trope is itself 100% problematic and we should never use it. What we need to think about is, when do we use it? And we need to make sure that when we use it, it is not being applied in situations where it's not appropriate. So that's my thoughts on that. So I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on any of the things I've talked about today. Please comment below, and I will talk to you again on Monday. Thank you for listening.